Hey beauties, welcome back to 2000 and Pretty. Today we are going to talk about the Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette. Guys, this palette, off the bat, just want to say I love it. This is Anastasia's first permanent palette, and this is actually my first eyeshadow palette from Anastasia. Eyeshadows period from Anastasia. I've never actually sought after her other limited edition releases or the collaborations that she did with some of the high profile beauty influencers. I never really, was one to go after those. And then recently, prior to this palette actually coming out, I was contemplating picking up a few of her singles. If you make a quad in any store that's selling Anastasia, you can pick 4 shadows and get the palette for free, and it's $10 a shadow instead of 12. So prior to this releasing, I was actually thinking about picking up a few. I would swatch a few every time I would go into Ulta, and I was kind of determining which ones I was most interested in if I was going to go ahead and invest in some of her shadows. But then, guys, she brought this out, and this had some of the shadows that I was interested in, like the burnt orange and other shadows that were in a similar color family but may not be specifically in this palette, but it's following the color family that she chose for this palette. Now, prior to all of that, I really had already convinced myself that I was not picking this palette up. I had convinced myself that this was just another neutral palette, like I said before, and that I didn't need it because it was going to do what every other neutral palette does, and it was just going to make me work too hard to get color to show up on my skin tone. And then one day I just went into Ulta with no intention of buying this, and I swatched it. Why did I do that? I swatched it and I fell in love right then and there, and I bought it that day. And that's new for me because usually I dwell on things. Like, I have to think about it before I make a purchase. There's only certain things that I buy right then and there on the spot. Most things, it takes me weeks, sometimes months, to actually make a purchase decision, unless it's a limited edition product that I know for sure that I want. But yeah, I usually don't buy things on the spot. So this is the actual palette here, and we are going to get into some of the details about what's going on with this. First off, this palette has sort of a soft velvet exterior to it. That's not exactly my favorite kind of packaging, because this is kind of like the original Urban Decay Naked packaging, and the reason why I don't like it is because this velvet over time tends to pick off, or it comes off, and then given the color and the texture, it's going to get dirty so easily. So as soon as you start getting into these palettes, as soon as you start getting makeup on your hands and you go and you pick this up, it's going to get dirty, and it's not going to be the easiest thing to clean off. But I do understand why she picked this velvet kind of exterior, because of the whole theme of modern Renaissance. It kind of fits the description and the and everything that's going on with this palette. So it makes sense, and honestly, it is nice to look at and it's nice to feel. I'm just concerned about the long time wear of it. I feel like it's going to break down over time. But this palette, again, like I said, this is actually her first permanent palette, and it's also the most expensive palette thus far. Usually Anastasia's palettes range anywhere from about $28 to maybe $36, I think. They're in that range. This palette actually retails for $42 plus tax, and so I know a lot of people were a little disgruntled that she raised the price on this, but you do get more shades. You get 14 shades instead of 10, instead of 12. So naturally the price is going to increase. I don't know overall if this palette has more product or less product than any of her other palettes, but I would imagine that it's pretty much the same amount of product, because you get 0.02 ounces, which is not a lot of product, but you do get a lot of shade variation. So I think she kind of dispersed, or them as a brand, they dispersed the colors, the amount of products you get in each pan, to match how many shades you are getting in this palette. So with this palette, you do get a pretty good mirror. It's a pretty nice quality mirror. It's not like a cheapy mirror that's going to make you look distorted or oblong in any kind of way. You also get a double-sided brush. One end is for packing on shadow to the lid, and the other end is for blending out. I don't necessarily like this brush, if I'm being honest. I find that the blender side of it is a little bit scratchy. The side where you would pack shadow on isn't too bad, but I find the blender side to be a little bit scratchy. And I've never used any other Anastasia brushes, so I don't know, you know, how it would compare to other brushes, but this one is just not my favorite. Now, getting into the shades, there are 3 shades in this palette that if you were to go onto the Anastasia website, you would find from the permanent shades, from the permanent single pans are in this palette, and those shades are Buon Fresco, Burnt Orange, and Warm Taupe. Okay, so you can find those 3 shades in single pans. What I've noticed with Anastasia is that she tends to, like with her limited edition palettes, she's made quite a bit of the shades from those palettes permanent, so it's not very surprising that there are some permanent shades in here. But I think everything else in this palette, I think all the other shades are newer shade additions to the range. Now, when you get into this palette and you stick your brush in here, the first thing that you're going to notice is that the shadows are very soft. They do kick up a lot of product, so when you are applying this, you might get some fallout. However, it's not the kind of kick up or not the kind of powderiness that equates to ashiness, because the shadows are by no means ashy, but they are very soft. The pigmentation is there, the blendability is there, they smooth out on the lids, they stick to the lids, and they last. They do not fade, at least from what I've found so far. I've had this palette for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I've been using it just about every makeup application because I've been wanting to test it out to make sure, you know, that what I believe about this palette is true. So I've been using it pretty consistently over the past 2 to 3 weeks of having it, and that's what I've noticed about it so far. Initially, I was not going to get this palette, like I said before. One, because of it being just another neutral palette at that time I was thinking, but again because of these 3 shades right here, Red Ochre, Venetian Red, and Love Letter. I kind of had in my mind that those 3 shades would just look the same on me. I didn't think that the color variation was going to show up on my skin tone, but to my surprise they actually did. You know, Love Letter is more of a pink, Venetian Red is a soft red, really nice to throw into the crease, and then Red Ochre is more of a burnt brownish red. So I actually like the 3 of those shades individually because they do perform differently. They do give off a different look, and I'm actually really happy about that because that was a big thing for me when it came to this palette, whether or not I wanted this palette. But of every shade in this palette, the selling point for me, the real selling point for me, was this shade right here, Realgar. This shade was the first shade that I swatched in this palette, and I swatched it because I needed to know if this was going to be a really good orangey brown warm transition shade for me, because had I swatched that shade and it not worked or not giving me what I was looking for at the time, I wouldn't have bothered swatching the rest of the palette. So when I swatched this shade and I saw how beautiful and warm this was against my skin tone, I was here for it. So I went ahead and I swatched the rest of the palette, and it just made me gasp, and that's why I had to spend my money right then and there on it. But this shade, Realgar, this is something that I love to put in my crease. This is just a really great transition shade for me. I also like mixing it with burnt orange and warm sienna. So it just depends on the look that I'm going for. Some looks I want to be really turned up, some looks I want to be turned down, and I find that this shadow plays well with everything in this palette. These colors just go really good together. I actually like the composition that is going on here, and I have used every color. Have I used every color? Yeah. Yes, I have. Have I? Yeah. So I've used every shadow in this palette for different reasons. I've used some of them on the lid, some of them in the crease, some of them on my brow bone, and I have not been disappointed by anything in this palette thus far. I've tried this palette with and without primer. Generally, anytime I'm wearing eyeshadow, I wear it with a primer, but I wanted to see what kind of a look I would get from it without wearing a primer underneath it, and it still came out pretty good. Of course, it didn't last as long as a look where I did wear a primer underneath of it, but it still came out pretty good, and it still held up for a while before it started to fade away. But with a primer, it lasts all day. The colors stay where I want them to stay. They don't fade, they don't just blend into each other, so I'm happy about that. No complaints there. But going forward, I will always wear a primer with it. That's just because that's how I like to apply my makeup. So as I'm talking to you about this palette, or maybe at the end of the video, I'm going to insert 2 demos showing you 2 different ways that I've worn this palette. One with a primer and one without a primer, or maybe I'll do a neutral, like a soft neutral, just regular everyday you can go to work in this kind of look, and then I'll do more of a dramatic look. I don't know, but you're gonna get 2 different variations from this palette. I'll insert either as the video is playing or at the end of the video. I am enjoying this palette so much, you guys, and I'm actually really happy that I bought it, and I'm surprised because I did not expect to enjoy it or to love it as much as I do. I had already convinced myself, honey, that I was not getting this and that this is not going to take up space in my collection, but I got it and I'm happy. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this review and demo. And if you have tried this palette, comment down below and let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear if you guys are using it and loving it. I'd also like to hear, you know, if you guys are not having such a great experience with it. Let me know, you know, what are some of the complications you may be experiencing with the palette. Just comment down below. Let's get a conversation going and we can talk about makeup for a little bit. Everything else on my face will be linked in the description. I don't normally type out what I'm wearing, but I think I'm going to start doing that. Just so I have a reference for when people ask me, because I have been getting a lot of questions recently, mostly about like lip products, what I'm wearing, and sometimes about the highlight that I'm wearing. So I think I'm going to start putting down below what's on my face so that you guys can just check there and see what it is I'm wearing in any specific video going forward. I'm not going to go back and try to remember. So from this video forward, I'm going to try to make it a habit to remember to list what's on my face. Okay, but that's it for this video, guys. I really do hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Okay, do that. If you are new to my channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because you know that you want to. And to all of my older subscribers, to, you know, the more recently joined subscribers, I really do appreciate you joining me and supporting my videos and for your feedback. I do appreciate you. I see you. And I just want to drop something out really quickly. I haven't put it all together yet, but I am putting together my 500 subscriber giveaway package. So I'm not there yet, but I'm planning on it. You know, I know that it's coming, so I want to start shopping now and start picking up things here and there so that when that time does come, I can be prepared and I can just make that video and get it out. So that's my next milestone, the 500 subscriber giveaway. And once that's all together, I will definitely make a full video about it and let you guys know more information so that you can have a heads up on what it's going to be. All right, guys, I will see you in another video. Bye.